Chapter 2 of The Jewel of Seven Stars. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Roger Moline. The Jewel of Seven Stars by Bram Stoker. Chapter 2. Strange Instructions. Superintendent Dolan went quietly to the door. By a sort of natural understanding he had taken possession of affairs in the room. The rest of us waited. He opened the door a little way, and then with a gesture of manifest relief threw it wide, and a young man stepped in. A young man, clean-shaven, tall and slight, with an eagle face and bright, quick eyes that seemed to take in everything around him at a glance. As he came in, the superintendent held out his hand. The two men shook hands warmly. "I came at once, sir, the moment I got your message. I am glad I still have your confidence." "That you'll always have," said the superintendent heartily. "I have not forgotten our old Bow Street days, and I never shall." Then, without a word of preliminary, he began to tell everything he knew up to the moment of the newcomer's entry. Sergeant Daw asked a few questions, a very few, when it was necessary for his understanding of circumstances or the relative positions of persons, but as a rule Dolan, who knew his work thoroughly, forestalled every query, and explained all necessary matters as he went on. Sergeant Daw threw occasionally swift glances around him, now at one of us, now at the room or some part of it, now at the wounded man lying senseless on the sofa. When the superintendent had finished, the sergeant turned to me and said, "Perhaps you remember me, sir. I was with you in that Hoxton case." "I remember you very well," I said as I held out my hand. The superintendent spoke again. "You understand, Sergeant Daw, that you are put in full charge of this case." "Under you, I hope, sir," he interrupted. The other shook his head and smiled as he said, "It seems to me that this is a case that will take all a man's time and his brains. I have other work to do, but I shall be more than interested, and if I can help in any possible way I shall be glad to do so." "All right, sir," said the other, accepting his responsibility with a sort of modified salute. Straightway he began his investigation. First he came over to the doctor, and, having learned his name and address, asked him to write a full report which he could use, and which he could refer to headquarters if necessary. Dr. Winchester bowed gravely as he promised. Then the sergeant approached me and said sotto voce, "I like the look of your doctor. I think we can work together." Turning to Miss Trelawny, he asked, "Please let me know what you can of your father, his ways of life, his history, in fact of anything of whatsoever kind which interests him, or in which he may be concerned." I was about to interrupt to tell him what she had already said of her ignorance in all matters of her father and his ways, but her warning hand was raised to me pointedly, and she spoke herself. "Alas, I know little or nothing. Superintendent Dolan and Mr. Ross know already all I can say." "Well, ma'am, we must be content to do what we can," said the officer genially. "I'll begin by making a minute examination. You say that you were outside the door when you heard the noise?" "I was in my room when I heard the queer sound. Indeed, it must have been the early part of whatever it was which woke me. I came out of my room at once. Father's door was shut, and I could see the whole landing and the upper slopes of the staircase. No one could have left by the door unknown to me, if that is what you mean." "That is just what I do mean, miss. If every one who knows anything will tell me as well as that, we shall soon get to the bottom of this." He then went over to the bed, looked at it carefully, and asked, "Has the bed been touched?" "Not to my knowledge," said Miss Trelawny. "But I shall ask Mrs. Grant, the housekeeper," she added as she rang the bell. Mrs. Grant answered it in person. "Come in," said Miss Trelawny. "These gentlemen want to know, Mrs. Grant, if the bed has been touched." "Not by me, ma'am." "Then," said Miss Trelawny, turning to Sergeant Daw, "it cannot have been touched by anyone. Either Mrs. Grant or I myself was here all the time, and I do not think any of the servants who came when I gave the alarm were near the bed at all. You see, Father lay here just under the great safe, and every one crowded round him. We sent them all away in a very short time." Daw, with a motion of his hand, asked us all to stay at the other side of the room, whilst with a magnifying glass he examined the bed, taking care as he moved each fold of the bedclothes to replace it in exact position. Then he examined with his magnifying glass the floor beside it, taking especial pains where the blood had trickled over the side of the bed, which was of heavy red wood handsomely carved. Inch by inch, down on his knees, carefully avoiding any touch with the stains on the floor, he followed the blood marks over to the spot, close under the great safe, where the body had lain. All around and about this spot he went for a radius of some yards, but seemingly did not meet with anything to arrest special attention. Then he examined the front of the safe, round the lock, and along the bottom and top of the double doors, more especially at the places of their touching in front. Next he went to the windows, which were fastened down with the hasps. "Were the shutters closed?" he asked Miss Trelawny in a casual way, as though he expected the negative answer, which came. All this time Doctor Winchester was attending to his patient, now dressing the wounds in the wrist or making minute examination all over the head and throat, and over the heart. More than once he put his nose to the mouth of the senseless man and sniffed. Each time he did so he finished up by unconsciously looking round the room, as though in search of something. Then we heard the deep strong voice of the detective. "So far as I can see, the object was to bring that key to the lock of the safe. There seems to be some secret in the mechanism that I am unable to guess at, though I served a year in Chubb's before I joined the police. It is a combination lock of 7 letters, but there seems to be a way of locking even the combination. It is one of Chatwood's. I shall call at their place and find out something about it." Then, turning to the Doctor, as though his own work were for the present done, he said: "Have you anything you can tell me at once, Doctor, which will not interfere with your full report? If there is any doubt, I can wait, but the sooner I know something definite, the better." Doctor Winchester answered at once: "For my own part I see no reason in waiting. I shall make a full report, of course. But in the meantime I shall tell you all I know, which is after all not very much, and all I think, which is less definite. There is no wound on the head which could account for the state of stupor in which the patient continues. I must, therefore, take it that either he has been drugged, or is under some hypnotic influence. So far as I can judge, he has not been drugged, at least by means of any drug of whose qualities I am aware. Of course there is ordinarily in this room so much of a mummy smell that it is difficult to be certain about anything having a delicate aroma. I dare say that you have noticed the peculiar Egyptian scents, bitumen, nard, aromatic gums and spices, and so forth. It is quite possible that somewhere in this room, amongst the curios and hidden by stronger scents, is some substance or liquid which may have the effect we see. It is possible that the patient has taken some drug, and that he may in some sleeping phase have injured himself. I do not think this is likely, and circumstances, other than noise which I have myself been investigating, may prove that this surmise is not correct. But in the meantime it is possible, and must, till it be disproved, be kept within our purview." Here Sergeant Daw interrupted: "That may be, but if so, we should be able to find the instrument with which